Thanks, Lucy. So welcoming you again to the practice and the webinar of your unique holding space practice. And welcome to everybody who is watching the recording. It's great that you're able to take advantage of learning alongside us in a way that works for you. So here we are gathering, and so far there are 7 of us. As I said, my name is Emily Gillies. I've been on the teaching team with the Center for Holding Space for 5 years or so, and it is my pleasure to be working alongside Lucy, who's also on the teaching team. And it's an honor to have this topic come up and to know that it's very special to both myself and Lucy. So I'm excited to hear how it's special for each of you as we go forward. We're going to start with a moment of centering and grounding, connecting us where we are across the internet and across this globe by having a bell. And we always ring the bell twice. The first bell starts the moment of the pause, and then we're invited into a reflective time, whether you want to close your eyes, whether you want to become present to yourself in your chair and in your surroundings. And if you want to open your heart and become present to those here on the call or those that might watch the recording as well. And then the second bell will end the time of our pause and our reflection. So I welcome you to do that, Lucy. Thanks, Lucy. And another element that I enjoy when we meet in circle is to start with a poem. It gets us into a reflective space, and it gets us thinking down in our hearts a little bit differently than we might have done in the earlier parts of our day so far. We're going to read the poem twice, and I'll read it once in my voice, and then Lucy will read it again in her voice. And sometimes the cadence of different voices lands with us differently, or the opportunity is to let the first reading of the poem just wash over you, like you're sitting beside the waves on a beach, and you're just letting those waves come to you. And then perhaps on the second reading, focus and see what message the poem might have for you or what lines are jumping out for you. Some invitations there. The poem that we have to share is called Startings and Endings by Judy Brown. We start the time together strangers and end up friends. I start out wondering who you might be and end up loving you for all your beauty, energy, confusion, and for the soft and human spots, for edges rough and clear that speak your heart. Work shouldn't be like this, the world would say. Work's clear, objective stuff, no matter of the heart. It doesn't seem to work that way for me. Whenever work has craft and skill and artistry, my heart's right there in the middle of it all. Whenever work is gloriously fun or deeply troublesome, my heart wades in and drags me with it, never asking how I like the water or even if I swim at all. Whenever work's worth doing, none of me can stay behind. And so we start out strangers, and I end up loving you.
Startings and Endings by Judy Brown. We start the time together strangers and end up friends. I start out wondering who you might be and end up loving you for all your beauty, energy, confusion, and for the soft and human spots, for edges rough and clear that speak your heart. Work shouldn't be like this, the world would say. Work's clear, objective stuff, no matter of the heart. It doesn't seem to work that way for me. Whenever work has craft and skill and artistry, my heart's right in there, in the middle of it all. Whenever work is gloriously fun or deeply troublesome, my heart wades in and drags me with it, never asking how I like the water or even if I can swim at all. Whenever work's worth doing, none of me can stay behind. And so we start out strangers, and I end up loving you.
Thanks, Lucy. We have a chance to weave all of our voices together here, and we'll do a short check-in. And you're invited to share your name, share your location, where you're calling from if you wish, and curious to know if there was a line of the poem that jumped out to you. And in the chat, we will have the poem is there for referencing back. And Lucy's going to put a list of our names in the chat, and that'll be the order with which we can check in. But if you'd like to pass, that is fine. And if you'd like to wait your turn and come back if you're not sure, that is fine as well. Do you know who's first on the list, Lucy?
Yes, Kylie is first, but it's so hot here, my hands are sticking to my mouse, and so I'm having a bit of trouble fixing my list. So Kylie to kick off, followed by Kate, and by that time I'll have the list up.
Thanks, Lucy. Hey, if you're comfortable going ahead, Kylie.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Kylie. I'm based in Sydney, Australia, and my the part of the poem or the line of the poem that resonated most for me was soft human spots and edges, rough and clear, that speak to your heart. That, yes, the soft human spots was probably what sort of spoke to me the most. Thank you.
Thanks, Kylie. Go ahead, Kate. Thanks.
Well, I'll say good morning, everybody, because I'm in Melbourne, Australia. So it's just after 10 a.m. here. And hello to everybody. My name's Kate, and I, like Kylie, the soft human spots spoke to me and reminded me that in order to become intimate, we need to actually be vulnerable, and those are, I think, our soft spots that we tend to cover, as it were, and yes, that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Good morning from Australia. I'm Sue. I'm on the Gold Coast. And it was the last, that last sentence, we start out strangers and I end up loving you, that the poem started with as well. I think that's something that that I really enjoy in meeting people, is getting to know them even in those really short conversations. And looking for the good in people and seeing the good in people and acknowledging the good. I come out of a way of living, a contemplative way of living, that I honestly believe there's good in everyone. And we just have to see it and acknowledge it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Barb. I'm in Perth, Western Australia. So Aussies gathered here today. I love the soft spots. I love that we end up loving once we get past our own stuff and really see someone as they are. But I did have a chuckle at the whenever work is gloriously fun or deeply troublesome, my heart wades in and drags me with it, never asking how I like the water, or even if I swim at all. But I had to have a little laugh reflecting on life's journeys, and that rings so true.
Now, I'm guessing there isn't another Sue.
No, I just realised Sue twice. That's how special you are to me, Sue. I put you in twice. I mean, So let's
Yeah.
go to Liz, followed by me.
So I'm Liz, and I live in the Blue Mountains, just out of Sydney. So I can tell a lot of us are from Australia, judging by the warm clothes. My favourite part was the bit about being pulled into the water. I just thought that was delightful, but also so true. Never asking how I like the water or even if I swim at all. I think that just sums up things that can happen. So I really liked that poem. I liked the way it was read by both of you, and particularly that bit spoke to me. Thanks.
So my name is Lucy, and I am from Australia, but right now I'm sitting in the United States of America on the West Coast, and hence the cool clothes and the flushed. It's very hot here at the moment. And I too love this poem. I loved reading it and rolling around the ideas in my mind. And I want to agree with each of the parts that people have said so far as my favourite. Another favourite part would be the first line. We start our time together, strangers, and end up friends. I start wondering who you might be and end up loving you. And I have to say that's my experience in all the holding space work that I do. And I think it's part of the reason I'm really drawn to it. So excellent poem choice, Emily. I love it. Over to you.
Go ahead, Kate. Yeah.
I thought it might be worth mentioning that my two sisters are here today. My sister Liz and my sister Lucy, and just so that you're aware of that. Thanks.
Thanks for mentioning that, Kate. That is fun to know that you have your sister get together happening right now. Thank you both for taking the time to join us and to support Lucy and be part of the community. And you're welcome for picking the poem, Lucy. And there was a few I was thinking, and then I saw this one. I thought, oh yeah, this sums up how it is so nice to come together with people that you might not know from other places of the world or never having had conversations together. And yet, like you said, Lucy, as we have these conversations at the Center for Holding Space, we end up knowing each other, caring about each other, knowing that these lovely people are doing this good work around the world and being curious about these topics around the world. And I could say I am from central Canada. I'm in the province of Saskatchewan, where, as Lucy said, it was hot where she was. It's hot where I am, and I have probably a bit of a sunburn on my face. And it's just later on in the evening. It's just past 6 p.m. here. So it's nice to meet you in this space. And the line that specifically spoke to me now is whenever work is gloriously fun or deeply troublesome, my heart wades in. And I've been having a bit of an email exchange with a couple friends trying to sort through some troubles that certain we're having, and just as witnessing and talking through some stuff this week. And it's troubles, and I'm there with my heart, and it's my heart coming through in my email responses and seeing everybody else's hearts being there. And life isn't just the gloriously fun, it's also the troublesome, and it's all there. So I'm feeling very alive, even though it's a difficult situation. I'm supporting my friends. It's also a lot of vitality in speaking through the heart. Poems reminded me of that. Thanks for checking in, everyone, and for having this time together as we grow our circle and hear our voices blending together. Some of us might have been familiar already, having met in circle, and a practice that we also do is to have agreements, a little shared expectations of how it is that we'll meet together. So we have 2 hours for this time specifically of us, and it's good to mention some of the expectations, and Lucy and I are going to read a list. There are 7 small points. Afterwards, if anyone wanted to discuss anything, add any additions, we can have some time to reflect on them together. If you're able to put them in chat, then you can also read along. I'll read them, and Lucy and I will alternate reading them ourselves. So number 1, as we meet, we will hold stories and personal material with confidentiality and will not share anything that is not our own outside of this circle.
Number 2, We listen to each other with compassion and curiosity, and to the best of our ability, we will hold space for each other without fixing, judging, or offering advice.
3, we commit to making this a brave space where we are encouraged to step outside of our comfort zones, and we acknowledge that this may feel uncomfortable. We commit to being patient and gracious with ourselves and others if discomfort arises.
Number 4, this is a consent-based environment where everyone is encouraged to participate, but there is no obligation. All activities are invitational. No is a complete answer.
5, we ask for what we need and offer what we can. And in this space of reciprocity, we look after our own needs while supporting others in having their needs met as much as we are able. This might take the shape of asking for a pause in the recording, or asking for something to be repeated, calling for a bell, or anything that would assist your time together while we're here. You're muted, Lucy.
Thank you. We take responsibility for our biases, unearned privilege, etc., and will do our best to accept challenges if our unconscious biases are disruptive or hurtful.
And 7, we agree to employ a group guardian to assist with technology and other inquiries, and to monitor the group's needs, timing, and energy. We occasionally will pause for a moment by use of a bell, and anyone in the circle may call for the bell. So that is a brief outline of some things on my heart, and it's good practice as we meet to know what our container will feel like and then what our boundaries are. Are there reflections from anyone? Do you have anything you'd like to change, or do you want to, it's not necessary to voice your agreement, but you're welcome to voice whatever comes up to you as we have read those together. Are there reflections or questions? Kate?
A reflection on the wording. One of the ones towards the end that Lucy read, I think it was unearned privileges, etc. I find the word etc. a bit out of sync there in a way, and I wonder whether something like and so forth or something could be used. That's just a personal comment.
It is rather vague, exactly, Kate. And is it clear enough for the time being? I would agree
yes,
that.
Sorry, no, it wasn't that it was vague. It was just that etc. is a sort of harsh word for me anyway, and I just thought something else might sound better, but that's a personal reflection.
That's good learning. I could take that forward. Thanks for that reflection, Kate. Barb, you had your hand up?
Yes, I just wanted to comment that I really enjoyed no is a complete answer.
You're welcome, and I fully agree, and I support that in life in many different ways.
Yeah, so interesting just to feel supported that your no is enough and that's complete without justification or whatever. Just beautiful. Thank you.
You're welcome. You can thank Heather. I think she probably first wrote that, and I've stayed with me.
Thank you, Heather.
Anything to add or anything to change or anything else to mention? Okay. Thanks for taking that time to solidify the way that we'll meet and to have those agreements together. At the end, it was mentioning the guardian, so I will just say a short bit. You've seen Lucy juggling a few things in her role while she's speaking and putting things into chat and putting things into our text. She'll be sharing computer sound later while we journal, and we have a little bit of music playing in the background. So Lucy is behind the scenes doing a lot of things. If you have a technical question, feel free to send a private message to Lucy if your internet's unstable or you have something that comes up, but it can also be rather informal. We're just the 7 of us here, so that's okay if anything comes up. Feel free to mention it in conversation too. And Lucy is a support to me where I can stay focused on discussion, and she's handling some of the background things. So it's really nice to meet with those elements of Circle being present and to have developed this together somewhat as well. So thanks for helping me model that part of the Circle way, Lucy, and letting me lean into your presence, and we can all lean into Lucy's presence. So if there's a time where you felt that a bell would be a good moment to acknowledge something that's said that's very profound, if for yourself you'd like a moment to help regulate, to help breathe, to take a little bit of a pause, it's okay to message Lucy privately, put your hand up and say, could we have a bell here for a moment? And Lucy will give us another moment with the bell. So I love these moments of imagining that we're sitting in circle together and meeting in person. So we're all, our chairs are together and we have our topics at hand and diving into conversation. And why we have joined together to have this conversation is to celebrate and witness with each other how it is that we hold space and the specific ways that we hold space in our personal lives, in our professional lives, or for ourselves. And possibly we'll be inspired by the other folks. Maybe we'll find direction for ourselves going forward if we're not sure, or maybe you'll hear yourself say things you didn't know you knew. Maybe you'll hear yourself saying something that's news or a different direction or some new piece of learning for yourself, or you'll hear something echoed or reflected in another participant that might inspire you on your journey of holding space. Specifically, this topic comes to my heart as I have supported 3 cohorts of the Center for Holding Space certification program. So with the Center for Holding Space, there's a foundation program that you could take, and that is 8 months of the basic information that Heather has encapsulated in her book, The Art of Holding Space. So we're always honored that Heather has written this book that we can all learn from and grow with. And so after the foundation program, some folks take the certification program where you can become certified as a holding space facilitator. So I have been the main teacher of that course, and I love having these intimate conversations with people who are taking the learning off the page from the foundation program and really embedding it into their lives. We don't teach much theory in this program. It's about where are you actually doing the work? Where are the lessons coming up? Where are you bumping up to your learning edges? Where are you seeing all of this information that Heather's generously given in the book and in the program? Now, how do we do it in real life? And we have conversations about that every week. So I've been in spaces with people in professional spaces and personal spaces, wrestling with these topics to such beautiful degrees. And what I notice is that we all have a spark that lights up. The first time you would have heard the terminology or seen Heather's book, maybe you have that moment of, oh, somebody speaks this language. Oh, I didn't know anybody, could explain these concepts, but it just makes sense in my heart. Those of us who are drawn to this work have that unique little bit where we get lit up. And fostering that has been such a joy for me in the certification program. So it's so great to have another conversation today to foster that within the 5 of you who hear live, and for those who are going to watch the recording afterwards. Being able to articulate your own joys of holding space, your questions of holding space, where you're naturally drawn to it, where part of it really isn't for you. It's so valuable to know that and to discuss it with people who also share the nuance of the language, who share the passion for the language. After being alongside Heather for about 10 or 11 years, it's been quite a long time since I was following Heather, and she was facilitating an art retreat for us, and I've followed her writing ever since. It's just been a slow growth to embedding more holding space into my own personal life. And I went through a divorce in that time. I am a single parent to my 2 teenage sons, and life changed quite a bit through my divorce. And I feel like I've used holding space to like frosting on my life everywhere, whether it's personal work, if it's paid professional work and the different things I do. I don't know if there's a part of my life where I don't hold space now in some way, or reflect about it, or imagine where it is. So it will be my joy to hear some more of the same from you, 5, and from Lucy, from all of us, to have a conversation together, because I think it's a largely invisible practice that we have. There's my own sisters-in-law, my parents, people closest to me might not know what I do or understand or recognize in the moment, but So it doesn't have to be overt. It doesn't have to be known by anybody else. My kids have no idea how often I do this, and yet it's so impactful. And that's where I love having the language and the concepts to be able to talk about it, and then the other folks here in our webinar to be able to talk about it together. So that's where I hope some of this can be similar for you. So let's return to our, well, maybe not even to the list on our chat, but I would love to hear first, let's just share in a brief general sense of where we do hold space. And we can hear from our own voices of everyone here. And I will put the talking piece in the center. After we share with ourselves generally about, you could speak to your professional life, your personal life, then we're going to go into breakout rooms and you'll have more time to discuss in detail about like the very specific ways that you hold space. So first of all, let's have our first conversation of where do we hold space. So I'll put the talking piece in the center and you're invited to share where you personally are coming from today in the call. Where do you hold space in your life? So just unmute yourself when you're ready to speak and we'll just take turns that way.
Will I go first? Oh, it says Elizabeth Stresser on my name. It's Liz, by the way. I would say at the moment that I hold space for my partner who's going through a rough time, which is impacting on us, on our very lives. I mean, anyway. But fortunately, I have two fantastic sisters who are holding space for me. So it helps me stay buoyant. So I like that term, it's a largely invisible practice, but boy, does it make a difference. So I'd say that from me. Thanks.
I hold space in my work as a spiritual director. I also facilitate an absolute delight every month, a contemplative women's group. So I hold space for that. Hold space for that group. I also hold space for. Am holding space at the moment for a number of friends who are going through some very significant life changes and challenges. And the people who hold space for me are my darling husband, but also my Anam Kara, my soul friend. We have made a commitment to be soul friends for each other, and we hold space for each other as well.
Since I've consciously found that I am holding space or desire to hold space, one is for my 92-year-old mum who's continues to quilt and be very active, but I feel reflective conversations are happening and I can feel a transit starting to happen there for mum. For my sister and my niece who's got 3 little boys, and very sacredly for me, starting to hold a greater container for me, my needs, who I am, which feels really lovely.
I think in a general sense, for me, holding space would be anytime I ask someone, how are you? That's when it comes up for me. And that can be in any context of my life. It can be having a meeting with a colleague and asking how are they generally. And it sort of came up recently where I was working with someone and I asked how they were, and it was just, it was like a very they were just very open about how they were feeling. And she said afterwards, she apologized and said, I'm sorry, but you know how it is when someone asks how you are and they get a sense that you genuinely care, like, about the answer. So for me, yeah. So in the general sense, it's whenever I ask someone how they are, because I do genuinely care about everybody in my life. Yeah, and trying to learn more about holding space for myself. It's only been something that I've begun to do very recently. So on that journey as well. And I thank you for listening to me.
I'm going to agree with Kylie again. And like her, I just in my everyday life, I do care about whether it be the shop assistant or whoever I interact with. I'm particularly holding space for my two daughters who both have their first babies. One is 11 months old and the other is 6 weeks old. And, 7 weeks old. And we're delighted to say that they're doing well, but the nature of motherhood, particularly with littlies, is that it can vary from day to day or hour to hour. And since I've retired, I've trained as a funeral celebrant, and when I have a family that I'm helping to work out a meaningful ceremony for them, that is particularly a time of holding space and allowing them to really have meaningful conversations about what would be right for them. And like others have mentioned, learning to hold space for myself is something I'm gradually learning to do. And for me, that's really about being kind to myself in the way that I try to be kind with other people. Thanks.
So I might pick up the piece and say one of the realities of being in a circle or online in a small group with your two sisters is you can't exaggerate or or lie. And actually, Kylie's been a good friend, a dear person in my life for 10 years as well. So I'm really being feet held to the fire. No, but seriously, gosh. You know the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once. I sort of feel like it's everybody everywhere all at once that I hold the space for, and I've become much more vigilant about when I have the capacity to do that or not, and to my process I'm exploring. My inquiry is when to assess that's that I need to not hold space for that person and strengthen my cellular wall, and in the spirit of Heather's work around holding space for yourself. And it's I've just come back from a 10-day silent retreat, so there were actually no words shared for 10 days, and yet people came up to me on the today, where we spoke a little bit and shared, and they said, thank you so much for being there for me for this and for this and for that. And I'm like, I had no idea. Like I was doing it without even words. It just sort of oozes, which is not necessarily a good thing in the sense of draining the capacity. So that's a bit of an angle I didn't plan on going on. But yeah, so everybody everywhere all at once. Most specifically, I'm a yoga teacher, yoga therapist, teacher trainer, blah, 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 all those sorts of stuff in the yoga world. And I'm really interested in holding space for yoga teachers and yoga therapists and teacher trainers and yoga professionals right across the board. And I do quite a lot of work in this space. And I would start with, when you are teaching yoga or working as a yoga therapist or in a one-on-one situation with a student or client, what percentage of the time are you holding space? And it's depending on the size group I'm with, I get them to put in the chat box, or smaller groups we share. And, you know, it's 90%, 95, 98. I wish it was 100, 20. Really? 20, but I wish it was 100, you know. So it's most, you know, it oozes out the pores of yoga teachers. Kylie's a wonderful yoga teacher and yoga therapist too. So that's probably why she does it all the time with everybody. So it's yeah, and just to echo what Emily said, you know, I came to this work when I read Heather's blog post, and it just resonated. It, you know, landed in my heart, and I was like, this is truth, and I want to know more about this, and immediately signed up for the first workshop she was running later that year in Australia. So yeah, and I've been involved with the Centre for Holding Space since then, and I love it. And I also have a particular interest in listening circles as well. So it's with everybody, everything, all at once. And when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So everybody needs space held for them. Peace back to centre.
Thanks, everyone. It is true. When you're a hammer and everything looks like a nail, we want to put this sauce on everything of life, I think. My heart is so full listening to the genuine warmth and compassion that we have, that we name it as holding space, as you were saying, Kylie, just that genuine asking someone how they're doing, and that they have that sense of that you are genuinely listening and you're genuinely caring. It's such a beautiful way to be humans. We're here to be in relationship, as problematic and troublesome as relationships can be. I think it's what we long for. So this is a way for us to have those relationships be more meaningful, just to know these nuances. And it is interesting that it can be everyone in your life. And what I find about the more I have conversations about holding space in general senses, and as you mentioned, Lucy, in the specific topics that Heather has mentioned, the specific concepts, it does help me to be able to put specific words on the angles in life where I am specifically holding space. And I might not realize it. And it might be a really difficult situation. I had a really difficult situation with my ex-husband's current girlfriend, where we're trying to co-parent kids together. And she and I were just not on the same page, and the conversation wasn't going very well. But was that all my holding space muscles to be in that difficult situation, and to talk to some other friends who were holding space for me as I was frustrated about it and sad about it, and I could speak with them about it. So I know that there's value in looking at those specific nuances in specific relationships. This is really where I'm holding space, and to do that in conversation with others who know to the degree how important it is, and how much we do focus on it. So I invite you in your conversation here in your breakout rooms to be as specific as you're comfortable sharing, of course, and everything is invitational, as we said in our agreements, and the breakout rooms are not recorded. So you will be with 3 people in total, and let's meet until 5 past the hour. No, sorry, coming up to the top of the hour. So it's 19 minutes on my clock. So we'll be coming back here at the top of the hour and share that deeper inquiry. And it isn't as much about letting other people be informed by what you're saying, but the chance for you to hear yourself say the words, I hold space for my children. I hold space for my husband or partner. So yeah, see what comes out of the situations where you do hold space, and how is it to put voice to those words and to be witnessed in those words. So the work of the other 2 people in the room is to witness and to acknowledge that we are doing these very specific works. I'm thinking of a broom. For some reason, the image of a broom is coming to me, and you can do a lot with, you know, one sweep of a broom, but there's so many individual, like in a corn broom, you know, like individual little long pieces of whatever it is that makes a broom. So what are those individual long pieces is somehow the image in my mind. So if that helps or not. So you'll be called back at 18 minutes from now at the top of the hour. And is anybody unfamiliar with breakout rooms? Okay, I think we're kind of Zoom experts here. So I'll open up those rooms and I'll see you back. And if you have a question, you can chat back to me. But anyway, enjoy your time together. Are there any questions before you leave? All right, thanks. Enjoy. Hello, welcome back. As we land back in this conversation and we stop the other conversation we were having a moment ago, I'll invite Lucy to ring a bell just to sit with that transition. And as we do that, I invite you to maybe gather what's been coming alive in your heart, in your body, or in your mind, and see what wants to sit with you during the moment of our bell. And as we gather our thoughts together for what was shared during the breakout rooms, if there's a person who's watching the recording, I'll invite you, perhaps you paused the recording yourself and sat with your journal and thought about the various ways that you hold space. So I didn't mention that before, so I thought I would mention it now. Feel free to take that time for yourself and really settle into that question. And as we're coming back from the question in our large group now, I'll put the talking piece in the center and invite anyone to pick it up if there was any ahas that you wanted to share, or a certain learning or a certain reflection you have from your time together in the breakout room.
I'd like to share that I was reflecting on the sentence that no is a complete answer, and saying, and I then realised that perhaps would be helpful for me to remember that no is an option, because I'm somebody who tends to say yes to things when I'm asked. My immediate response is to want to particularly help or be involved or whatever, and that for me, to remember that no is an option, I think will be helpful in holding space for myself. Thank you. I'll return the talking stick.
Thanks for sharing that, Kate. Isn't that such good learning, and probably a constant reminder that we can have for ourselves if we're of a tendency to be helpers and to be supporters in people's lives. There is part of our conversation that we'll get to in the next hour where we will in depth talk about holding space for ourselves, as it's two sides of the same coin, offering holding space for others and simultaneously holding space for ourselves. So it is so good to be aware of that. And I'm glad that that sentence could point you in that direction, Kate. I'll put the talking piece back in the center for anyone else to pick up.
I'd say for a long time, certainly since I've been an adult, my goal in life is to be a wise woman. But I realised along the way that just because you're old doesn't mean you're wise. And a lot of people might at first seem wise, but really they're not. And one of the things that I noticed in my breakout group, that I had two wise women with me, and Kate and Sue, and I think the holding space, the concept of it, and holding space for others and holding space for yourself really does help lead to that goal of becoming wise. So that's my two bobs worth.
I came today. I almost didn't come today, but I came today. And the poem really tapped into, as I said, coming together as strangers and ending up loving people. And as we were talking prior to the breakout room, I was thinking again, what was it that called me here? Because I'm in this space of, this is tapping into what Liz said, is sitting in this space of such wisdom and beauty, and do I belong here? So to be in the space with Liz and Kate, and to be seen, I think was very powerful. And I think that's what holding space does, is it allows us to be vulnerable and to be ourselves. And the wisdom, I think, that is starting to grow is that holding space for self. That how do we hold space for others if we don't know how to hold it for ourselves?
It feels really profound on many levels, Sue. I appreciate your reflection on being vulnerable in the space, and honor the emotion that brings up, and that if we can't be vulnerable, how are we holding space for others? And would it be okay if we rang a bell at this moment and we can support you in this big learning and the feelings that are coming up for you, and in our own learning that we have alongside you? Thanks, Sue. To be witnessed really is that profound, and that is the gift that we give others when we hold space for them, and then if we allow others to hold space for ourselves, to be witnessed in that same tender way. Thanks for sharing that, Sue, and thanks for the bell. Any other thoughts that someone would like to share? I'll put the talking piece back in the center.
Maybe I'll pick up and say that in our room we were talking about that how easy or how hard it is, how easy it is to want to advise, problem solve and fix other people, how hard it is to not do that, and how important it is to not do that. And then there was wonderful conversation about, particularly as women, that we are conditioned to care for others, and as part of caring, often there is that problem solving, fixing the scraped knee, that even down to sort of a very practical sense, and so it is perhaps working against years of maybe a whole life of conditioning, through upbringing, through sort of community, society, patriarchy. Don't start me. So yeah, other juicy stuff, but I don't want to be the only person talking, but that was worth sharing.
I appreciate the reflection that so much of this work is unlearning. And as I went through the material the first time in the foundation program and thought, oh, good, this all makes sense. I'll just trot along in life now doing all this. No, I had to stop and like learn as I went, like baby steps, like tiny steps, and unlearning so much of what you're saying, Lucy, that what I thought I was doing with good intentions earlier in life, nope, that's not the plan. We gotta, anytime you're learning new habits and changing what's really deeply embedded is big work. And so that's a lot of this invisible work we do also, is this internal peeling away layers that are no longer needed, or taking away barriers that are no longer needed. So yeah, lots of unlearning going on along with the learning.
And I feel just overflowingly blessed that I arrived in Heather's book, or that she arrived in my life, and it's expanding from there. I was sharing there's a feeling that I recognize as being less familiar, which is being seen, heard, witnessed in a way that is safe, and I can feel authentically okay just however I am. I really am registering. There used to be a feeling of, just be yourself, but which self do people really want? And in this community and with others, it's in this community and the sessions that I join, there's this more new yet wonderful feeling of, oh, just how I am is okay. It's beautiful. I deeply appreciate the experiences. And I return the talking stick.
Thanks, Barb. How I am is okay, and it's beautiful. Just uplifting those words again, because that seems so profound. If we can arrive to spaces in life that how I am is okay, and other people find that beautiful, and I find that beautiful. Thanks for saying those words, Barb. And with that, we can change to our next question that we'll ponder together after we've looked at the different ways we hold space and what other words we put together into this nebulous quality. We'll be invited to journal on this question, and we're going to have music on for 5 minutes or so while we journal. And it's a bit of an interesting question, and it might not be one that's easy to answer, and maybe the answer will come to you in a month from now or 10 years from now, I'm not sure, but it's one that's a good one to ask as you're becoming aware of your skills as a space holder, or your passion as a space holder, or your specific avenues as a space holder, is to imagine or to define or to get a sense of your unique quality of what you bring to holding space. Do you have an inner knowing that you can put words to? Is it a just seems right kind of an aspect? And earlier in our conversation, someone had said it's just a practice in life to believe the best in people, to believe it, to be compassionate towards people. And that can be part of how you arrive to holding space. Is there something that is a core understanding for you, or a core belief that you feel is what is on your unique heart? And I'll also say that teaching alongside Heather for 5 years and the foundation program and in the certification program, there's been a lovely freedom, because although she's on the calls and she's written an amazing book and can talk about these contexts so specifically, she is never wanting us to copy and be exactly the examples that she sets. It is her joy, and it is my joy to do this and to assist others to find our unique expressions of holding space. The language that the book gives us is a great start, and the where it points us in certain directions and situations can be helpful, but it's not the end of the story. The story lies within each of us to determine and to put words to narrate our own experience of holding space. It isn't meant to be just that Heather Platt wrote it and that's the end of it. So this is our chance to put our own words, and alongside the certification program where we wrestle with our unique spaces and what we claim as a focus, and certain things you'll claim as not a focus, which is just as important. Some people really prefer one-on-one, some people really prefer large groups, and that's good to know if you have those particular preferences either way. And the more that you formulate that, the more you can celebrate or see that and build it and grow it. So there is no wrong answer here, of course. It's your own personal reflection. And there's a second part to the question too, just if it calls out to you to answer as well. When you think of holding space, the other people for whom you're holding space, do you know what degree they are aware that you're holding space for them? And does this impact your engagement? And why or why not? Because we do this in relationship with other people. So it's kind of a curious angle as you become aware of yourself as a space holder. Then, as is it reciprocal? When do people know that space is being held for them? Is that important? Does it change how you engage with them? So these might not be fully formulated answers just at the end of 5 or 6 minutes journaling. It's just to get us thinking along these lines. So Lucy's going to share some beautiful music, and let's play the music for 6 minutes, Lucy, because that's some couple deep questions. So I'll invite you to turn to your journal, keep your camera on or off, whatever's your preference, and we'll come back to some large discussion afterwards. We're going to pause the recording again. Take your time to finish your last few thoughts and sentences that's going around as we can settle in back together. We just paused the recording during the music time because it creates too large of a file when we're trying to share it online. So that's been our practice. So it was lovely music. And if you have the recording, perhaps put on some lovely music if you're inspired to do so. Thanks for providing that, Lucy. Just taking some deep breaths here in my space and just kind of breathing kind of into my heart center, because I know it's an important topic, and I'm so grateful for this work to be able to put these things into words I never would have been able to put into words. I could have lived my whole life, never known this stuff, so I'm so grateful. So I know it's big work of the heart. So if you would like to pick up the talking piece and share with others, if you're so inclined, of anything that you wrote or how the exercise was for you on either of those questions, it would be a joy to listen to some of those answers.
I'll pick up the talking stick. I was thinking about holding space for others, and a couple of words came to me, and one was kindness and the other was curiosity. And I think being curious leads you to want to understand more. So if you're asking questions or that and with the background of the kindness, whether you say compassion or kindness, I think they have a similar connotation. And the other thing that I need to remind myself about is actually not to make assumptions. And I was saying to somebody the other day about that, and she said that if you look at the word assume, you can see that the letters, if you make assumptions, you make an ass out of me. And I thought that was, I hadn't heard that before, and I thought it is a salutary comment to not make assumptions, which we have a tendency, or I have a tendency to do. I think we all do to some extent. Thank you. I'll put the talking stick back. I don't want to stop anybody else from speaking, but I just remembered one other thing was that I work on the assumption, if I am consciously holding space for somebody, that they actually within themselves have what they need. And part of my holding space is actually enabling them to recognize that. Thank you. I'll put the talking stick back.
Those are both good points, Kate. Absolutely. I've been reflecting for myself about curiosity and some of the challenging situations I've had either in last week or other times, just to think it's so easy to get into judgment. It's so easy to be harsh. Curiosity really does change everything. And I'd heard the saying too that a Sue makes an ass out of you and me, because there's a you and a me. And I feel that's even more true because usually both people have that happening. And yeah, but the assumption that everyone has their own best answers inside, I think that's a beautiful way to operate too. Thanks.
I was thinking about the does it matter if other people know if you're holding space for them? And I was thinking that it doesn't matter because there's so much you can do by being there for someone and providing that space and container without them knowing. I don't know what other people think. I look forward to hearing about that.
Actually, I might pick up the piece on that topic.
You just inadvertently muted yourself again, Lucy. You started out.
Sticky fingers on this pad today is anyway. Yes, I would have answered that it doesn't matter whether people know I'm holding space for them at all. But I had a situation with, I had a friend in Sydney who I held space for what I think of as the world's longest midlife crisis. It went for years, and I sat on the phone, I sat in person, I sat, so many times listening to his highs and lows and woes and insights and this, that, and the other thing. Years, like at least 5 years, but maybe more. And then I was having a conversation with him and something came up about holding space. And he said, "Oh, I just wish I could find someone to hold space for me." And I had this, like, it was such a, it was so interesting because, my reaction, which was is an emotional reaction, energy, emotion. I had a reaction, there's no doubt about it. And so I took that to my meditation mat and I reflected upon it. And, part of his world's longest midlife crisis was pretty self-focused, and so it wasn't surprising in his case, perhaps. And I sent him compassion. But it was interesting that I had, like I said, I had a physical somatic response to him saying those words. And it's been good because since then I really absolutely don't. It doesn't matter at all. So it sort of kicked that one out of me, I think, the ego part of it out of the way. And so I'm grateful for that. I loved that when I read that on your plan, Emily, that you were going to bring that topic into the field. So thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up, Lucy. And yeah, and I was just going to say that ties in nicely to also involving part of our conversation for the time we have left to think about our own needs in the midst of holding space. So some of that might be clarifying for yourself and your own boundaries. If you had overextended yourself with him, then there might be that regret of like, you didn't even know how many times. So being really clear as we come to these opportunities to hold space for other people, is this our best choice right now? Or, am I being really, do I have the resources right now? Do I have the capacity to hold space for them? And honoring what those answers would be for ourselves is part of a reflection into what you were offering there, Lucy. But we can continue talking about our journal answers, but also everything involves so much about holding space for ourselves in the midst of all this. So feel free to bring those reflections forward too as we continue to share. I saw your hand up. Let's go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to talk about generosity of spirit, which is something that I've been thinking about for a long time. And I do feel that I do have generosity of spirit. And it's interesting, I've noticed it in people that hold space for other people, have great generosity of spirit. So I think it's, I mean, I don't think it's a unique quality to me or to people who hold space. It's just interesting that it comes up again and again as I meet people who do hold space.
I love that term, and I have a follow-up question for you. The folks that have generosity of spirit, does it ever get so depleted, or how is it that they keep that alive for such a significant way to be able to hold on to that phrase? Is there a sense that it wavers or it wanes, or you do things to strengthen that, or is it just always available, or do you have thoughts along those lines?
I don't think it's necessarily always available. And I think it comes back to holding space for yourself, because if you're completely depleted, it's hard to do anything, let alone feel generosity of spirit.
Something that arose for me in the question, when you think of people whom you're holding space for, are they aware? And does this impact your engagement? I find that when I'm in those formal situations, what I call formal situations of holding space in my work as spiritual director and facilitator of groups, that I have the power in that situation, in that people are aware that they mightn't be able to name it as holding space, but they're trusting that you're going to be, these are my words, holding the container. And they come with a sense of trust in the skills that I have. And in those formal roles, I have the power. In situations that I find myself, which comes along with the generosity of spirit that Liz was notioning, I had 2 instances last week where my daughter was sharing something really quite distressing for her, and I immediately went into that space of holding space for her, where I had to let go of my power as her mother. So for me, this has raised the questions about power and empowerment. And I went into that space of holding space for her, and I noticed around myself those skills that I've grown, but those innate abilities to be still, my whole body and persona being still, the looking in the eye, the quietude, the non-judgment, the not needing to respond, not responding, but that deep listening. And those skills, I feel, empower the other to, as Barb said, be who they are as they are in that moment of time. And it struck me that this witnessing of the other and the other's experience is, for me, what holding space is. That it's being with the other, and there's so many images that are coming about what that might look like in the wider world, and the generosity of spirit. I was with a friend who I've been estranged from for a while, And it was in a situation with her where her husband is dying, and I visited him, and she was there. And afterwards, she said, "Oh, you know, I'd love to have a conversation with you." And we were in the foyer of the hospital, and I said, "How are you?" You know, as Kylie said, you know, that asking that question with that sense of, you know, I'm really interested. How are you? And the holding space for her when my generosity of spirit just didn't want to do this. But for me, it was tapping into that sense that this isn't about me. And so that generosity of spirit in being able to sit with her and hear her story and hear her pain, and to be able to walk away from that not feeling depleted, that I had given as much as I could to this person in witnessing her journey. So for me, that was she mightn't have been aware that it was holding space. She may not have put words to that was what I was doing, but she said, "This is the first time in a long time, Sue, I felt heard by anybody. So thank you for listening. Thank you for being with me."
That's a beautiful reflection with so many nuances, Sue. Thank you so much. Reflecting first, you had said in the formal group setting, when people come for a spiritual direction, it's like the container is already set, that they're aware that they have this trust in you and this is going to be your role. And then a sudden conversation with a friend, very different, you know, with different circumstances and at a hospital. And I've talked before in our certification group about holding space being overt or covert. And those are words I think don't always translate in every language, but sometimes it's very overt that you're going to you had mentioned also, Kate, of helping people plan for funerals. Like that's a very overt, we're going to hold space for your family. We have this specific job, and Kate, you're going to walk them through a process. And Sue, you would do the same as well. And then it's kind of those covert situations where your friend wasn't aware how beautifully and gracefully and genuinely she was being held. On some level, she was, if she reflected back, but those spontaneous moments are more covert. And I also love, it sounded like you had a balance of knowing how much emotional input you were going to put in, or emotional output, maybe, you know, if we talk about the psychic membrane that Heather writes about, you knew how enmeshed you were or were not, and you were clear with your own heart. I won't be depleted from this conversation. I will listen. I genuinely care right now because of this, and taking care of your own needs. And would you say that that's accurate, that there was a balance for yourself and you were holding space for yourself and your friend in this moment?
Yeah, I probably wasn't aware I was holding space for myself as well. So thank you for that. Yeah, thank you. And too, stepping into that space, or that formal space too, there's a holding of space of myself before I step into that space, so that I can be that role for others, if that makes sense. And I probably wouldn't have put words to that in such a way. Thank you, Emily. That's been helpful. Yeah.
You're welcome. It is a practice, and I think we do to hold space for yourself before we go. I know it is worth it to center or ground yourself or prepare anyway that feels good. And then just to have that awareness of, I am using my holding space muscles right now. Oh, I see that, you know, this situation might challenge me for 10 minutes or a day, but I know what is happening here. I'll put the talking piece back in the center.
Sorry, it's me again. I've got two things that I wanted to say. The first thing is that thank you for that, Sue, because I am going to be meeting with someone in the not too distant future, someone I've had a long association with. His father just died, and I did go to the funeral on Friday, and we worked together, and it was an interesting relationship. And I will need all my generosity of spirit to sit with her and hold space for her. But I think it's hearing what you did, I feel inspired. So thank you for that. But the other thing I want to ask about was that your use of the word power and empower. I just thought that was really interesting. I sort of hadn't thought about power in that sense of being the person who is running the whatever it is. And yeah, so I found that really interesting, because that's something that I can see I've been doing with some of the things I'm doing, for example, with my recorder group, you know, having the power because I'm running the group and all that sort of stuff, and empowering others. And so, yeah, I found that fascinating. Thank you.
Time for a few more reflections still before we have some other couple topics and before we wrap up. So if there was any part of your journaling that you would like to put voice to, or anything that's arisen in your heart since we've been speaking, you're welcome to speak forward. Thinking back to some of the earlier conversation before our breakout room, I think specifically folks were saying that holding space for themselves was new, and that was a growth edge, and it might be something. And I can share, if you haven't taken the foundation program, when Heather first wrote it, the first module was 6 weeks. It was the basics, and then there was holding space for yourself, and it was 4 weeks, and then the rest of them were 4 weeks. And we would get to holding space for yourself, and people went, oh my gosh, I haven't even considered this before in my life. There is so much to learn and to think about. So Heather's elongated that now. I think it's 6 or 8 weeks on its own now. And that's why she has another program called The Full Bodied Life. And then last year she had another program called Know Yourself for Yourself. And a lot of that is realizing that the self-inquiry piece is so important, and that those of us that are helpers show up to help other people and then don't always do the same for ourselves, or share, that same compassionate mindset towards ourselves, or don't talk to ourselves with the same non-judgmental, with the same allyship that we would for someone else. So did you want to speak any more words forward about your own practice of holding space for yourself, and how that might change going forward, or setting intentions, or where you are with that? I'll place the talking piece in the center. And if you have questions of a general nature, I'm happy to reflect on them with you as well. And I'm sure Lucy is too, and all of us can put our heads together.
I'll take the talking piece for a moment. I'm doing Heather's full body course, and it's for people who aren't familiar, it's 25 sharings, I think, is a really good way with reflective questions. And it's just so interesting, because I'm finding that saying yes to doing that and sitting with the thoughts that arise is part of my holding space for me practice. So, seeing things as more isolated or siloed. Or now I'm doing this course, or now I'm doing that. But the courses that I choose to do, or the circles I join, or whatever, are actually the holding space, part of the holding space practice for me. They're not separate to it. I'll return the talking piece.
I agree. Oh, sorry, Lucy. I was just going to say, investing in community around me while I wrestled with holding space for myself was, yes, one of the best gifts of being involved in the community as well. Go ahead, Lucy. What were you going to say?
oh gosh, I could riff off in two directions now. I'm a bit, what will I say? Community and mystery. So the outer layer of the bowl that, you know, Heather beautifully writes about is, has been so important for me to continue to connect with, you know, in a very personal way. And to Sue's point about, you know, preparing before she's going to formally go in and hold space, you know, I do the same thing. You know, I have my daily practices that I do to kind of fill the tank, but then I have, to some extent, almost a ritual that I do when I'm going to be, you know, holding space in an online circle or be part of a call like this in a role, and so forth. And so I sort of, I'm calling in mystery to be with me, around me, in me, out of me, whatever. And I find that very helpful to feel I'm not alone. And so I've got that support, and then of course the community. And but the other thing I want to say about holding space for yourself is it's such a, I don't think it ever ends in terms of learning how to do it. It's a, I just, as I mentioned, just did this 10-day silent retreat, which was, you know, really about holding space for myself, because the only person I had conversations with was, you know, in here. And I'm very interesting, but I'm very boring at times too. Anyway, but while I was there, I decided to take with me, we were encouraged not to take any reading or listening or watching. But I decided to take Heather's book, The House That Tenderness Built. And I read that, and I had read that, was it 2 years ago? She shared that, Emily, I can't remember, but it's, you know, a couple of years ago I'd read it, and it was like it was like soul for the balm, but also educational at the same time, and reminding me it's, you know, the practice of tenderness is so sweet, and it feels so good at every possible physical, mental, emotional, spiritual level when I can be like that. And so if you haven't read it, I really recommend it, having just reread it again this week, in terms of holding space for yourself. Peace back to center.
I'm learning that choosing to hold space for myself is linked to valuing myself. So it's a decision around value. I had struggled with the concept of, I was a single mum with a child, and I struggled quite a lot with the put your own oxygen mask on first concept. I thought that was very counterintuitive to caring for this child, and until someone explained, or I had received an explanation that on a plane, because I would fly home from Queensland to Perth to visit my family with my young daughter, and someone said, well, you know, in a totally different context, said, well, you'll be unconscious and unable to help your daughter if you don't put your mask on first. And it was such a realization of, wow, that's, you know, that is a sense of valuing and growing into a true self-worth, that I would have a boundary or a care or a consideration about holding space for me. Return to center.
I'm reflecting on one element of how I hold space for myself, and something that's evolved quite a bit in the last few years is even to give myself time. And I think, I don't know if the culture I was raised in or my perfectionist nature, but I thought I'm just going to fix it right now, just immediately, just do the thing and just speed. Like I speed when I drive, just do everything fast. But now it's the gift to myself to know that I don't have to have the answers right now. And even in this conversation, I can see all of us thinking and, you know, things are lighting up in our own hearts and minds. I don't have to get to the final answer in the next 5 minutes. I'm going to sleep on this conversation tonight. I might have little bits come to my mind tomorrow. I know that my subconscious is processing it differently. I might have an aha a week from now or a month from now because of this conversation. So I think I'll allow for time to do that work, and I don't have to be over fixated on doing it myself or up in my head about it either. And that's one unique way that I've even evolved and changed. And it's kind of nice to put it in the context of caring for myself, that I can not have the burden of time. We'll have a little checkout round in a little bit here, but if there's any still questions about holding space for yourself or anything left about what feels uniquely you, feel free to speak that into center.
I was thinking that I think I have the good fortune to be somebody who thinks the best of people, and I guess I'm a bit startled when that doesn't work out. But it means, I think, that my whole sort of way of being is that assumption of the good in people, and I think that's something that has been of benefit to me all along.
Kate, that feels profound, and it does feel common to some people that are here with their hearts wide open about holding space. So as we transition towards our end, I would like to uplift those words about being compassionate and having those words, believing in the best of people, just so that you have a moment to remember that that is uniquely something that is embedded in your heart and in your way of being. And we'll transition and gather our thoughts towards closing as we hear those words and take a moment to pause with the bell. So thank you for this time and space for a slow and luxurious conversation of really witnessing, and someone had used the phrase deep listening. So I love that time together and the graceful sounds of the bell helping us with that. And as we started with weaving our voices together, we'll also end and hear our voices one more time, if you so desire to leave your voice as a checkout phrase. And you're invited to share what has shifted in you because of this time together. Just pick up the pace as you feel ready.
I think for me, being able to put into words that no is an option was, I'm hoping, will shift something in me. So, and it's been great, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Lucy. And I've really enjoyed today. Thank you.
So much to think about from the things we've talked about today, but actually it's that final reflection, the thing Kate brought up about thinking the best of others. And I definitely used to think the best of everyone. But my final years as a principal in a school, and some of the staff issues and some of the parent issues and child issues that I had to deal with certainly changed that. And so I have that trauma to explore and work through to get back to thinking the best of others. Or anyway, yeah. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. I think it's been lovely to meet everyone, and thank you so much, Emily and Lucy, for hosting this.
I feel a shift in tenderness and vulnerability, and a shift in appreciation for myself for whatever it is that leads me to value holding space so much, and to want to go on the journey. And obviously I'm on the journey, and I appreciate something I don't understand about why that's there, and I don't need to know really. But I'm far more conscious through this conversation that I not only love the gift of holding space for me and for others, but also the community that gathers around such a topic where hearts are similar, that want something that maybe, can or can't be articulated. Cool. Return to centre.
And my heart is full in calling in the mystery of holding space, and being with this group of holders. Thank you.
What has shifted for me is a continued expansion of joy and gratitude for coming into spaces like this together with wise women. Liz, I think you're a wise woman. This is everyone else. Yeah. Peace to centre.
I'm shifting and noticing that I have that soreness in your cheeks, like when you smile more than you normally smile, and all of a sudden your smile muscles are like getting a workout. So that's what's happening for me. This is interesting timing. I support the certification call from October through June, and then here we are in July. So I haven't been able to really dive into these conversations. And then our team conversations, where Lucy and I would meet once a week, also with Heather and Krista and the other teammates, they're on pause mostly through the summer as well. So it is just such a beautiful shift to land into conversations where we speak this language and we have the same curiosities, and that just put a little light touch of words on it, and we know what each other is saying, even across the globe and across the miles. So it's a shift for me to be able to get back into that space. And thank you so much, everybody, for being here and being part of that. If you wanted to weave your voice in, Kylie, you're more than welcome to, but you're also welcome to pass if you decide to.
I wish to say thank you for this opportunity to be here today and to listen and share with the group. Thank you.
You're very welcome. It's nice to wrap up here. And to those who are watching the recording, if you have questions after this, and to all of us here, of course, the resources that are available on the Center for Holding Space page are very immense. There's different kinds of programs to work at your own pace and other community options. And as Barb mentioned, the other program that she's part of is still accepting registration as well. So reach out with an email there, especially if you're watching the recording and there's something on your mind. You can get a hold of me or Krista and Heather through the Center for Holding Space, and Lucy as well. And we'd be glad to talk one-on-one some more if there's questions. So thank you everyone for co-creating this conversation on this topic we all hold so close to our hearts. I'll invite Lucy to ring a bell. Yes, Lucy?
Emily, Liz had her hand up.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Lucy. Liz?
So me again. I was just wondering if there's any chance that we, as this particular group, can meet again in a month or a couple of months just to check in. Just a thought.
That is a very good thought. I will send a follow-up email. Is there just wave your hand if you have some interest in that. That was Liz's question, just spur of the moment. Okay, that's wonderful to know. Isn't that wonderful? I guess our poem came true, that we can arrive as strangers and then we end leaving each other and loving each other and caring about each other. So thanks for putting that out, Liz. I'll be able to email through the same registration email, so keep an eye out for that. So thank you so much, Liz, for that warm option. Is everyone else feeling complete? All right, great. Thanks, Lucy. As I was visited by mystery while Lucy was ringing the bell, I was thinking if we met in a month, it would be because of what I was already saying about how we don't have our own answers. We give ourselves the time to process. So it would be no new material. It would be what's changed in a month? What else did you learn? Or what else did you discover? Or what else did your journal tell you in a month without anything new? It would be along the lines that I would present. So thanks for that option, Liz, and we'll be in touch in email. Thank you so much for your commitment and your attention and your time today, and for supporting the Center for Holding Space. It's really been an honor. Thanks for supporting me alongside, before and during and after Lucy, and all the best to the rest of your days in beautiful Australia, everybody.